Fear is a big deal. Fear seems to be one of those things that, we've been talking about it for quite some time. Fear and love, right? The difference between them and how fear displaces love and love displaces fear. And if you've been around here, if you've had your ears open at all, you remember some of the teachings that we've been going through in how to displace fear. I have to increase love, right? I'm going to displace fear. And if I don't, what happens is fear will rise up, and what will it do? It will displace love. We've talked about how fear, and even in this old clip, I mean, this is an old movie. How many of you ever watched the movie Dune? This is an old sci-fi movie from years and years ago. I'm sure it's probably one of those movies on the docket to be redone. You know, just like all the other movies have been redone. But it's kind of, if you're a sci-fi nut, I mean, it's a fun movie. But inside of this, what did he say? He said, I must overcome my fear. Fear is the mind killer. I must overcome my fear. Now, obviously in this movie, the context wasn't, well, what do I overcome it with? It was this, he was trying to, by the will and by the choice of his mind, by the power, by his own self-effort, he was going to rise up and he is going to try to control his mind. Right? And I think one of the things that's happened inside the church over the years is as fear has been recognized as an enemy of God and an enemy of who we are and who we are called to be, there has been this effort, this self-effort on our part, that if we just focus enough, if we just say no enough, fear will go away. I'll overcome my fear. But could I suggest to you that fear isn't removed? Let me put it this way. Fear is best removed by displacement, not by trying to create a vacuum. And so I want to displace it. I want to increase something to decrease this fear. And so we've been in this series on relationships and the power of relationships and trying to have healthy relationships and what it looks like to gain healthy relationships. And we've been using a lot of stuff from Danny Silk. And I don't know if you're familiar with Danny Silk, but some of you are. In fact, the book that I gave away this morning was a book written by Danny Silk. It's his latest book, and it's phenomenal. It's just amazing. And so that's why I chose it to give you. But in this book, Keep Your Love On, or another one of Danny's books, that's Culture of Honor, or Practicing Honor, or even this one more book, Loving Your Kids on Purpose. All of these books, one of the things Danny's talking about is Danny talks about this love piece, and that love displaces fear. And so if we can increase love, then we can decrease fear. And of course, that's what we weren't trying to do. We're not the only people that have dealt with fear. I mean, there are people before you that have dealt with fear. Look at Isaiah. Look at Isaiah. Here's this verse, Isaiah 41:10. And maybe Tony can get it up on the screen for us. Isaiah 41:10 says this. God is talking to the people of Israel. And he says, do not fear. In fact of the matter is, pause right there. There's many times that God comes and engages the people of God, the people of Israel. How many of you know that while the people of Israel were called the people of God, that all people are God's people? Right? All people carry his image. But there was a special revelation going on inside the Hebrew people in context of who God was. And so, but in this passage, do not fear. Oftentimes God comes, and some of the first things that come out of his mouth is this idea, don't fear. Don't fear. But don't fear because of what? Now look at this great passage. Do not fear. Why? For I am with you. And what's the series name that we're in right now, right? We're in the series name, With Me or Without Me. With me or without me. And here God's saying, don't fear. Why? Why are you telling me not to fear? because I am with you. This with word is huge. It's just a huge word. It's an inclusion word. It's a connecting word. It's a relational word. With. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. With you. It's not the only time this is talked about with you. There's another passage in Exodus 33, where the people of God are engaging, where the Hebrew people are engaging God, and as they're engaging God, there's a dialogue that's going on between Moses and God, and the dialogue is this dialogue about God saying, hey, I don't know if I'm going to go with you guys. You guys, you guys don't seem to be getting it, kind of a thing. And Moses comes up and he says, no, wait a minute. If you don't go with us, then we'll perish. We'll go if you go. I'll go if you go with us. There was this awareness of the withness. Does that even possible? Can you even make that work in your head? It's a Brentism. Just go ahead for it. Go for it. Just like there's this withism. There's this withness that God is wanting mankind to be aware of. And one of the things that we're discovering around here, and really the church is awakening to it in greater capacity. There you go. In greater capacity right now. Yeah, you guys are all going, what word is he trying to get? Right? Reminds you of, okay, yeah. There's this awareness, an increasing awareness, there's an awakening that's taking place where the church is beginning to realize that God never separated himself from mankind. That actually sin never had power to do that. That the power of sin is the power of, it comes from a lie believed. And the lie believed is that, God, you separate yourself from me. And the good news is that God never separated himself from you. You just thought he did. But when you think he did, when you believe that he did, you live a life of separation. And so this whole awakening that's taking place is we're taking responsibility off of God's shoulders, and mankind is beginning to own the responsibility we should have owned from the beginning. And that is, it was my thinking that disconnected me from you. It was never your thinking that disconnected you from me. It was my lack of awareness of who you are, and my lack of understanding the truth about who you are, God, that began to create thoughts and patterns in my life of disconnection. But all throughout history, Lord, you have been pursuing connection, wanting us to know as people, as created ones, that we are his children and he loves us. And there's no power on the planet or in creation itself or outside of creation that could ever separate us from his love. Unless we can't see it, unless we're disconnected from it because of our awareness. So just a couple of things to review to kind of pull us together before we get into the main push of what I want to talk about today. In a review, and you guys can pick up this on our podcast. If you go to our website, we're putting all this teaching out there for everybody to continue to listen to. But here's what we've discovered so far. How long do relationships last? They last forever. Relationships keep on going. I mean, the tangible things, the paper and the cars and the gold and the money and all that, that all seems to have the propensity to kind of burn away, and we can't really kind of, even when we transition in life, from life to eternity, there's this, what do we take with us? Is there anything that lasts forever? And we walk through this little piece of how relationships last forever. And so it's so vital to grow healthy relationships, because we're going to have these relationships for a long time. We also talked about the secret to healthy relationships, and the goal of relationship is connection. Remember that? That the goal of relationship is connection. So how do I keep my connection on? How do I stay connected to you? We talked about that a little while. And we also talked about how truth and trust are two different things, but truth precedes trust. Remember that? We talked about how oftentimes we think that trust is based in my ability to predict your behavior. And if I can predict your behavior, then I can trust you. And if you'll act like me, then I can trust you. But we talked about how truth is really where trust is established. And it's in my capacity to open my chest up and expose myself to you. And I always am in charge of that, and you are never in charge of that. I'm always in charge of my truth. I'm always in charge of myself. Which then brings us back to this idea of self-control, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today, this self-control. But we've given you tools every week, and you have now probably a little notebook of tools that you can refer to as we continue to progress into relationships and how to make them the healthiest they can be. But here's this verse, Galatians 5:1. Ultimately, every one of us has been created to live free. Galatians 5:1 says this, "It was for freedom that Christ set us free. In fact, therefore keep standing firm and do not be subject again to the yoke of slavery. You've been freed by love. You've been freed by God. God, this might be news to some of you again, but we're just going to continue to reiterate it. God's not in control of you. That belief system that God is in control of you would mean that you're a robot and that you have no choice. Now, some of us like to live in a place of that kind of idea because we don't like carrying responsibility for ourselves. And so we like to pawn off responsibility and say, hey, I'll take the glory when I choose right, but when I choose wrong, well, it's somebody else's fault, right? But from God's perspective, understand that part of the nature of God and that He has actually bestowed and given to us is this attribute of self-control. If I am in control of myself, what does that mean? It means that no one else is in control of me. I am, right? And God is in perfect control of Himself all the time. He's in perfect control of His half of you. Are you in control? You are in control, but are you aware that you're in control? And so this idea, you've been freed by love, so don't move back into this place of bondage again. The power that comes from freedom is this idea. No one controls me, I do. And when we discover that I am in control of me, here's a great one. I control me and I don't control you. When I get that one down, wow, freedom rushes in. Because what that also means is where there is control, there also is responsibility. And so if I am in control of you, guess who's responsible for you? I am. But if I'm only in control of me, and I'm not in control of you, all of a sudden what lifts? All this sense of responsibility and weight just lifts. Wait a minute, are you saying, Brent, that I'm only in control of myself? Yeah. But how often do we try to control more than ourselves? All right, so now here's where I started to go last week, and I ran out of time. This freedom thing, we've been made for. We've been made to live free. We've been made to live from the burdens and the weights of things. We've been all I'm responsible for, literally, I'm just responsible for me. Now I understand. I'm fully aware that in the parenting role, there are times when we have responsibility for our children, and because we have layers of responsibility there. But ultimately, when it comes to the place of choice, what we're needing to... I'm going to get ahead of myself, but I'm going to come back. Is that okay? All right. So, one of the things that we have not been taught well is how to manage freedom. And so even as parents, as we're developing our children, instead of helping our children learn how to manage their freedom well, we try to control our children. Because that's what we've been taught, right? Okay, now maybe, okay, all you parents, let me just, mass confession. We do a mass confession together just to kind of, have the same playing field here. How many of you have ever, in your parenting, something came out of your mouth and you go, man, that sounded just like my parents? Right? I mean, because we're byproducts of our environments. I mean, we really are. Things are handed down to us, and whether good or bad, whether right or wrong, whether we like it or not, there are things that take place, and now we have to rise up and say, wait a minute. Do I want to continue to transfer that, or do I want to fix that? So that doesn't carry down any further, right? That's amazing. Sometimes I watch my children, I watch my son interact with my granddaughter, and by the way, we have a grandson due this week. So, I mean, a little bit overdue. I think now we're looking at, come on, where's the phone call? So, anyway, this can be great. My first grandson, I have a granddaughter, it was amazing, but I want a grandson too, so, anyway, squirrel, okay, come back. There's this place where I don't think that we have learned to manage our freedoms well. We've not been taught to manage freedom well. And so without that, then so that's of course part of the effort of this series is to help us engage our freedoms well. And so engage our self-control well. In fact, here's a video. I want to show you this video. This video, as Tony's going to set this up, I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is a very common test out there that psychologists do, but it's really a test of self-control. And you let me know when you're ready for that. But in this test of self-control, what happens is there is a marshmallow placed in front of a child. And the child is tested to see where their self-control is. It's not a right or wrong. A child can do anything they want. But something's offered to them in advance. And is it there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's coming up. Go over to the marshmallow at the top. Top. Yeah, there you go. Click that tab. See if something's happening here. Okay, well, as he's bringing that up, there's this...
Okay, sorry.
Okay, all right, it's ready. So, check this out.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. I'm gonna go do something, and then I'll come back.
It's yummy. It smells really good.
Alright, so it's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. good? You did? You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
So there's this place inside of us. In fact, some of the studies that have been done with this is that the children, they've tracked children now, this test is years and years old, but they've tracked children who have now matured, and those children who were able to practice self-control then were able to practice that throughout their life. And other children who ate the marshmallow right away, they actually struggled throughout life in making decisions and choosing rightly. So there's this place inside of us that there really is this battle of self-control, of battling the needs versus the wants thing, you know? Now here's the dilemma of freedom. The dilemma of freedom is that when I am really free, we all say we want to live free. We want to be that. We want to be able to make our own choice. We want to be able to have self-control, all those kinds of things. But when we step into freedom, we step away from all the excuses. We step away from all the excuses of why. I can't blame anyone else anymore when I live in a free culture. It's interesting. Even our motivations change when we live free. Because think about this. My motivation is no longer fear-controlled. Think about the motivation. And you remember last week I used the offering cup as an illustration. And even that illustration of the fear of you have to give. I mean, you're supposed to give your tithe. You're supposed to give it, right? 10%, right? And how many of you ever felt like, oh, I don't want to. I want that to be my choice. I don't want to be made to give, right? I want it to be my choice to give. All right. And so we step into the freedom and we step away from the law, right? Law is in place. Law is in place to protect and to guide and to kind of lay the baseline minimums. So when you see the speed limit sign that says 65 on the expressway, how many of you say, okay, well that's the limit, and I'm going to do that? In fact, no matter, even if the signs weren't there, I still do that. In fact, even if I knew there were no police officers on the road, I would still do that. Because it's your choice to do that. And no one's making you to do it. How would that work out for you? How many of you would go 65? If you just knew verbally, hey, 65 miles an hour on the expressways, that's the speed limit. No one's going to control you. No penalties. There's nothing out there. Don't worry about it. How many of you would go ahead and do that? See, the deal is that when we remove controls, it reveals something about what's going on in here. A lot of us struggle from time to time, I'm sure, because I do. And if you're like me, then, and I hope you have some similarities to me, there's this little rebellious thing that goes on inside of you, you know? Kind of rises to the surface, don't tell me what to do, right? You're not the boss of me. You ever hear that before? We don't want to be controlled. But without controls, how do you learn to manage your life? We saw this video. These kids, some of them were able to handle that well, some of them weren't able to handle that well. How would you have done? Would you have waited? Oftentimes, it's not for, I think even that benefit of heaven, so to speak, the conversation of heaven versus hell is a conversation of benefit or punishment, right? And so we're needing a motivation in order to choose something. What if from heaven's point of view, the motivation is not that there's streets of gold and you get a mansion? It's not that you get out of hell free card. It's not the fear of burning and torment and gnashing of teeth forever and ever and ever and ever. You see the motivators, right? Fear or what's in it for me? Do you think the motivation of heaven is what's in it for me? Is that the motivation of love? What's in it for me? Well, oftentimes, from the earthly perspective, it is. Love is defined as, hey, I'll love you if you love me. Right? What am I getting out of it? Who's going to love each other first? You going to love me first? I'm going to love you first. Well, if I love you first, how do I know I'm going to get love back? You see the dilemma. So there's this dilemma inside of this choice, inside of self-control. There's a dilemma in this culture of freedom. How do I manage me well? What is my motivation? And from heaven, the motivation of God's heart, you guys, is this motivation of love. It's this motivation of relationship. It's this motivation of connection. You know, the reason the kingdom of heaven is a place of freedom is that God isn't controlling anything. He's in perfect control of himself. He always has been. He always will be. And he's wanting to develop a people that look like him, who are in perfect control of themselves. And the reasons for their control, the reasons for their choices are all referenced in love. Let me tell you how far this problem goes, how far this dilemma goes. Scripture says the greatest commandment is what? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, right? All your mind, right? Love the Lord your God. The second commandment is like it, and it's love your neighbor as yourself. Really? Love your neighbor as yourself. Yes, you spoke correctly. You spoke wisely, my son. It's right there. Love your neighbor as yourself. But here's the thing. Have we ever been taught to love ourselves? Or have we been taught not to? Have we been taught that thinking more highly of us is a wrong thing? We shouldn't do that. Have we been taught that, no, I need to keep myself humble, and which I'm not discounting, but have we been taught that, oh, I need to become lower, lower, lower? How low can you go? Lower. Right? The lower you get, the better. Right? We've been taught these kind of concepts. And we've been taught to not recognize ourselves the way we should recognize ourselves. And so even our capacity to love one another is stunted, because have we really been taught to love ourselves well? What does loving yourself look like? Does it mean Father's Day? Hey, your choice, wherever you want to go to dinner. Hey, you want to go see a movie today? Today. Superman. Anybody? Saw it yesterday. Oh, amazing. Anyway, I want to go again. Is it on your special day you get to honor yourself? Is that what loving yourself is about? Treating yourself. Oh, I get to treat myself. I'm on a diet, but on my special day, on my birthday, I get to have ice cream. What is it that you use? How do you love yourself? What does that look like? See, this idea of freedom comes from heaven, and heaven is fueled by what? It's fueled by love. Second Timothy 1:7, it says this: God has not given a spirit of timidity or fear. Has not given that to us. But what has he given us? Yes, he's given us a spirit of power and of love and of self-control. Discipline. He's given us his spirit. And so the cool thing about self-control is if I'm in perfect control of myself, I no longer need to control you. But the dilemma becomes, well, then who is controlling you if you're not controlling yourself well? And how does that affect me? And if it does affect me, then what am I going to do to stop it from affecting me? So I have a sense of urgency then that rises up in me, and a sense of fear that rises up in me, and says, well, if you're not going to control yourself well, then I'm going to control you for you. Because if your behavior is not considerate of who I am, then your behavior could bring me harm, and while you're not in control of you, then I will be. Because why? Because I don't want to feel the hurt that you're going to create in the momentum of your choice. You see how this thing is entangled? This dilemma? Mankind has done it with God. Why do bad things happen to good people? Ever heard that before? Well, how can God be a loving God if? And just fill in the blank. Right? And what we're doing is we're actually applying to God responsibility for the choice of someone other than God. But you say, well, Brent, but God could always choose to intervene and stop it, and He's not choosing to intervene. That's right. Because intervening would mean controlling. And it would also mean that He's motivated by fear. You say, well, Brent, why wouldn't love motivate Him? Why wouldn't He have stopped that drunk driver from getting in the car and running that stop sign and killing that person? I mean, if a loving God is a loving God, wouldn't He have done that out of His love? If He did, He would undermine the very thing that He is trying to empower. And that is to empower people with self-control. To empower people that their choices would look like His choices, not because they're made to, but because they desired. It's the whole motivation of it. It's the whole God-mankind experience. What do you do? What does it look like? Just for conversation's sake, what does it look like if we took the heaven and hell dialogue off the table? Not discounting it, not elevating it, just take it off the table for right now. And now let's talk about your relationship with God. How does your relationship with God begin to change dynamically when you remove fear from it? Or the benefit of it? Is your relationship with God built on the desire to know and to be connected to the one who made you? Just because of that? Not based on what you get out of it or or the punishment of it, whatever. The opposite of that. I mean, this is kind of an inventory time. We've got to take inventory of our own desires, our own purposes in the church, our own. Why do we gather? Why do we worship? What's our motivator? Is it need? Is it want? Do I need a relationship with God for some reason? Do I want a relationship with God for some reason? You see, both of those need and want in the relationship is going to indicate motive in the relationship. When we talk about these relationships, we think, well, obviously we have this relationship with God going on. We have a relationship with others going on, and we have layers and circles of relationships, right? We have that most significant relationship in the very center of our experience, which is carved out for God. And then we have our most significant other human being, and then we have, of course, the children and family members, and all the way down to George Clooney. Remember the other week when we were talking about that? Way down there outside, and I don't even know the guy, but I hear about him on TV kind of thing. We have all these different kinds of relationships, all different layers of relationships. But what's the motivation behind my choice to connect with you? Kelly and I experienced something, I was actually experiencing something yesterday that was pretty profound for me. Yesterday was June 15th. June 15th, at 10:30 in the morning, I found myself meeting someone at driver's ed at Bedford High School. I was taking driver's ed there, and I walked by and I saw this girl, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she says, "Hey, you're the guy my dad's building a house for." And I said, "Well, you must be a Hubbard." She said, "Well, you must be a Smith." I said, "I met Kelly at 10:30 in the morning on June 15th. And, you know, in some ways, our meeting is more significant than even our marriage. Because I would never marry her if I never met her. Now, let me tell you, in those early days of our relationship, there was an infatuation going on. And I was learning the difference between infatuation and love. There was a lot of, a lot of relationships, man, this feels good. I like the way you make me feel, so I'm going to come back for more. I like to feel affirmed, and I like to feel loved, and I like to feel this whatever this is. I like to feel that. And so we begin relationships this way, and we like, and it's this, what am I getting out of the relationship? And I like this, but somewhere in the midst of the development of the relationship, there's a connection that begins to take place that goes outside of it gets bigger than just, oh, I need you. Actually, I desire to be with you. There's this relationship that begins to develop, and you find yourself, and I wonder for Adam and Eve even, and I wonder for relationships throughout the years, even with God, yeah, we start somewhere in there. Well, I need God. I need a relationship with the one who made me. Yeah, I do. But then there's, okay, God, I want this and I want this. Have you ever asked God any wants? Have you ever gone and asked, have you ever done a wish list with God? Sometimes our prayers are more of that than anything else, but we go through our wish list. I want this, I want this, I want this. We almost sound like Bob on oh no, I forgot. What about Bob? I need, Dr. Leo Marvin, I want, give me, I'm not a slacker. Come on, have you ever been there before? And we do that with God, and we're in this relationship with God, and God's wanting us to awaken us to a whole different level, a whole different premise of relationship. Way past the need thing. He wants us. In fact, of the matter, I would propose to you that He desires us to want Him out of our want, our passion, rather than our need. Now, while the need thing is fine, could we say that it's almost like that our passion for Him, He's longing for that engagement out of passion, because that's how He engages us. He engages us out of His passion. It's not that need is wrong, it's just that passion is greater. But we've been taught over years and years and years in the church that passions are wrong. We lower our passions. No, don't love yourself. Love your neighbor. Well, that's nice, but how am I supposed to love my neighbor? Well, you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I've never been taught how to love myself well. Well, live free. Don't live under the law. Well, okay. How do I do that? We create new laws to live free. Because we don't know how to live free. Because the only way you can live free is when you learn to not live controlling other people. And you're only in control of yourself. But if I have a picture that God controls everything, and I want to be like Him, well, maybe we've been taught incorrectly. Maybe God isn't in control of everything. Maybe He is in control of Himself, and He's teaching us. Wants us to learn how to live like He lives. But Brent, if we remove all of the controls, then you're saying that I become responsible, and I'm saying yes. You are the only one responsible for you. Now, there's two ways to approach that. One way is to approach it, how's that working out for you? A little cynical, disempowering, dishonoring. How are you doing? How'd that work out for you? Yeah, see, you did that. I wouldn't have done that, but you did that, see? Now, how'd that feel? We can approach it that way. Let me just say that's not a very empowering way to do that. or we can approach it over here. And one of the things that Danny talks about in his book, Keep Your Love On, is as you walk alongside of people in relationship, you stay connected because you're protecting connection. But what you say is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Not what am I going to do about your situation. What are you going to do? Now I'm going to be with you. I'm not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you. You know, that kind of thing. I'm not leaving you hang out to dry. But I'm saying, what are you going to do? And in healthy relationships, we're able to do that. Now, there's other dynamics in relationships, and obviously there's boundaries that need to be set and different things. And while that's all true, I don't want to de-emphasize the need to make boundaries, because that's a very important part of healthy relationships. But when you do make boundaries in healthy relationships, you're letting the other person set the floor, or actually, to set the ceiling of the relationship. See, in this aspect of me bringing myself into the relationship and me always coming with my truth on, I'm always coming with my love on. In other words, here, I'm cracking my chest open. You can see inside of me. I'm bringing you the truth. I will always bring you the truth about me. No matter what level of relationship we're in, I will bring the truth about me into this relationship. But your capacity to handle that truth will determine the safety in the relationship. Now, while I won't be afraid, you're going to show me how much you honor what I'm giving to you. And how many of you know when you're honored in the relationship, you want to give more? And I'll give more. And I'll give more. And I'll give more. But when I'm dishonored in the relationship, I don't want to, you're showing me that you can't handle me. So you can only handle this much of me. So that's all that I'll bring. Jesus was brilliant at this. Jesus met people where they were at. He met them where they were at. In fact of the matter, there's a story, and then we'll be done. Let me just end with this passage. There's a passage in, how many of you guys remember the Mary Martha story, right? Mary Martha, anybody? Right? And, you know, and some of you guys have even probably tried to allot yourself in one of two categories, right? Oh, I'm the Martha. Oh, I'm the Mary, right? And then some of you, because, Mary was the, she was the lover. She was the feeler in the relationship, right? She was the feeler. And Martha was the task-oriented person. Get her done. Get her done, right? You with me? I'm trying to find it. I got it in my notes. Okay, let's read. I'm going to read this out of a translation it's the Moffat translation, but it might be a translation you guys have not heard of before, but that's okay. I just like the way they're worded. Here it says, in the course of their journey, Jesus entered a certain village. This is in Luke 10:36 through 42. And he entered a certain village, and a woman called Martha welcomed him to her house. She had a sister called Mary, who seated herself at the feet of the Lord to listen to his talk. And now Martha was so busy attending to them that she grew worried. So she came up and said, Lord, is it all one? What? Is it all one to you that my sister... That doesn't make sense. Is it all right to you that my sister left me to do all the work alone? Come, tell her to lend me a hand. And the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, Mary has chosen the best dish, and she is not to be dragged away from it. It was this aspect that even Jesus was, he wasn't dissing Mary, or he wasn't dissing Martha for doing the busy thing. It's not that it's wrong. It's just that Mary's chosen the better thing. The better thing. And it was this idea, in this situation, it was the presence over the principle kind of a thing. Martha was in the business of, and probably her love language was acts of service. And she was trying to love the Lord, through acts of service. She was trying to do all this kind of stuff for him. And even in the midst of that, in the busyness and the tasks of things, Mary was just hanging out at Jesus' feet. And Martha was trying to say, well, you should have Mary come and help me. And he was saying, no. She's just chosen the better thing. She's just chosen connection. She's just chosen right here to hang out with me. There's this place inside of a relationship. There's times when this is required to do things, there's times in the relationship and there's times for this. And in this moment, Jesus was highlighting this as the better thing. This is better. It's the same idea with the presence and principle. The presence of God, how many of you know that it's always supposed to be about the presence? It's always supposed to be about the presence. Except when it's about the principle. Presence is the better. Principle will work, but principle is only supposed to kind of help us see and get to the presence kind of a thing. There's this place in relationship where I can give you a small portion of me and see how you handle me, but there's so much more. There's so much more available if you're willing to create space for it in our relationship. Where are you at in your relationships? Where are you at in your relationship with your most significant other on the planet? Your mates. Where are you at? Are you at a place where both of you are coming as powerful people saying, here I am, and I feel honored by you, and so I'm giving you more? Because that's where we want to be. I mean, that's where we want to be there, right? And if we're not there, where are there different places? Are there places in our relationship where there's connections being threatened, and we're saying, no, we got to protect this connection? Because even this language in the series, this language is important for us because it's giving us new ways to think through things. Like the goal of relationship is connection. I didn't have that 2 months ago. I didn't have that verbiage, but now I do. And it makes sense to me. I'm going, yeah, the goal is connection. So how are we protecting connection? Without connection, we won't have a relationship. So how do we protect connection? How do I protect my capacity to hear you? And how are you doing at hearing me? Do you always have something to say when the other person in the relationship is speaking? Or do you provide space just for them to talk? And then they provide space for you just to talk. Do you feel yourself retreating in the relationship? Do you feel yourself choosing distance? Remember, one of the things we discovered is we're either choosing connection or we're choosing distance. One or the other. The bad thing about when we start choosing distance is everything that happens in a relationship, we begin to justify our distance. Even when good things are happening, we can't see them as good because we're trying to defend our distance. But when we're choosing connection, everything in the relationship I'm trying to work through to make sure we stay connected, to enhance connection. So when the good things are happening, I'm not looking for the bad things, I'm looking for the good things because I want to enhance connection. When I'm trying to reinforce distance, I'm looking for the bad things all the time. And I can't see the good things because I'm trying to reinforce my choice for distance. Does that make sense? And so in this relational thing that goes on, ultimately it comes down to the choices that I'm making as an individual. That I really am the one in control of me. And I cannot say that someone else is. I mean, you understand that there are times when externally, there are external things, that there's cause and effect, there's consequences of behavior, we have criminal activity that goes on, people have chosen to do something, then there's response, there's prison, jail, that kind of stuff, and you think, well, they're there against their will. Someone's making them be in jail. Really? On one level, we understand that, right? We understand that they're being incarcerated because they would much rather be out than in prison. But you understand that the choice that they made brought that conclusion. But ultimately, even your circumstance that's going on around you, while it might not be, while the circumstance might be imposed on you, you're still in control of you in the circumstance. You're still in control of you. You go back to the Holocaust, and you go back to people like Anne Frank and these people that were lovers of God in the midst of such just horrible atrocities that were taking place even in the concentration camps. These people were still in control of them in the midst of the circumstances that they were in control of. You're always in control of you. Always. No one else is ever in control of you. inside you. But that means that you're going to have to take ownership and bring up and carry this responsibility that says, you know, you're right, I am in control of me, and I choose to be responsible for me. I think this is the beauty of who God is. God says, I'm responsible for me in our relationship. And I can tell you how I will act in our relationship. And I am known as a faithful one because I never abandon relationships. I always follow through with what I say. I always am responsible for the choices that I make. And God is asking, and He's raising a people, really, He's growing a people that will look like Him. So the dilemma of freedom is responsibility. Do you want it? Because ultimately it's yours anyway, but in relationships, if we're not very honest about that, we just destroy relationships around us because we never take ownership of us. We're always blaming somebody else, which creates codependent relationships, which creates dysfunctional relationships. Remember, we want two powerful people in the relationship. Two powerful people, both knowing who they are, and both knowing that they carry responsibility, and both fully in control of themselves. And when you have two relationships like two people in a relationship like that, each of them are calling the best out of each other. They're calling the best out of each other. They're not blaming each other. They're just calling the best out of each other. All right, dads. Because it's Father's Day, let me just say this to you. Don't wait around for your mate to jump into this. You start. You start. Start loving. Start recognizing that you're in control of you and you're not in control of them. Lead the way. Show your mate what love looks like from God's perspective. Let me tell you what you'll receive. Although you're not doing it to receive, right? You're just doing it because that's what you want to be. You want to look like your Father in heaven. But what the benefits, which are all secondary, you'll begin to be loved in return. But even if you aren't, don't stop. Just keep your love on. Just keep it on. Okay? Okay. And wives, if it's not happening, call me. I'm just kidding. I don't want to. I'm more than willing to sit with you guys and walk through things. That probably shouldn't have said it. That probably ruined a bunch of stuff. But I'm just teasing you guys. But let it be your choice, guys. Let it be your motivation, just because you want to, not because you need to. I have to tell you this. Maybe this is a better way to go about it. Your wives will feel the pleasure of being chosen. They long to feel chosen, just like you do. Let's pray together. Stand.